Hello, everyone. This is another Black Conservative. I am Ryan Boland. Thank you all for joining me. As you guys know how the economy is working right now and how tough it is to earn a living. And even if you're getting more pay, if your pay has increased, your wages have increased or whatever, you know, as a 9-to-5 worker, how many hours you work, that even if you get a pay increase, inflation is holding you back. You got high gas prices, you have taxation everywhere, and it's really, really hard to really make ends meet. I don't need to repeat that. Well, according to this article that I'm about to read to you guys in Breitbart News, it basically gives data that confirms that reality that we all feel every day. Now, contrast that to what Biden said some time ago in an interview. I believe he made the statement that well, you know, the economy is good right now. The economy is good, you know, and we're bouncing back. I'm just paraphrasing his words. Basically said the economy is good. So we're feeling how bad the economy is, and you making this foolish statement that the economy is good doesn't make sense. I hope man, more and more people are seeing how this administration is just a complete disaster. But anyway, let's get into this article because I have something to say about inflation and what many researchers say inflation actually is. Many people say, well, some economists say that inflation is supply and demand. But is it really? We're going to get into that. So let's get into this article. And I'm just going to read a portion. It's very short, but I'm just going to read a portion of it. And it states that despite many workers in the U.S. seeing larger paychecks, they are seeing their finances squeezed by high prices because inflation is still outpacing wage gains. Yes, it is. Real average hourly and weekly earnings for U.S. employees fell 1% from May to June, seasonally adjusted, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reported today. I'm just going to read one more paragraph here, and I'm going to get into my commentary. This result stems from an increase of 0.3% in average hourly earnings combined with an increase of 1.3% in inflation. Compared with a year ago, real average hourly earnings decreased 3.6%. Earnings are up to 0.9%, but inflation has driven prices up to 4.4%. And I'm going to end the article right there. You can read the rest of that article in the go to the description box below and read the rest of the article on your own free time. It's pretty straightforward. It tells you how that inflation is really eating up the wages, the increased wages of a lot of workers in this country. But here's the thing. I find it interesting that that President Biden would make these statements about the economy being good. Why would you make that statement when people down there on the 9-to-5ers down there are dealing with the real deal? Okay, it's crazy. It's crazy. But let's get right into what I want to get into is what I believe inflation really is. Now, this is what I have read about from books that I purchased several years ago dealing with communism. Now, accordingly, Karl Marx, the founder of communism, wrote in his Communist Manifestos in 1848 that one of the goals of the Communist Manifestos, or one of the goals of communism, is a progressive tax. Now, what a progressive tax is, and I'm going to do this the best I can because I'm not an economist, but I'm going to say what a progressive tax is, what I believe it is. A progressive tax is simply a tax that progresses or increases over time. So remember what I talked about in past videos, that communists have infiltrated our country ever since the 1930s, and they increased and intensified in the 1960s. They infiltrated every institution in our country: politics, education, religion, entertainment, all these different institutions. Since they infiltrated these institutions, let's deal with the political realm. I'm pretty sure they put mechanisms in place to increase taxes throughout the country. Why? Because communists hate capitalism. Communists generally believe that capitalism is the problems, it's what's causing the problems in our world. Therefore, we need to, they state basically, we basically need to destroy capitalism. Okay, get rid of it either by force or taxation. In the East, they did it by force. They just went in the land. They just went to the farmers who had land or whatever, and whether it was in China or Russia, or whatever, and they just forcefully, by force, took the people's property from them, took their goods from them. In the West, and in America in particular, the way they do it is through stealth, is through taxation, or that's one of the ways they do it, is through high taxation. One source states that inflation is merely a hidden tax. It is not what economists state as the supply of what is it, law of supply and demand. Really? So if that's the case, then ever since the Federal Reserve was made into law in 1913, you mean to tell me that, and ever since, let me go back, ever since the Federal Reserve was made into law in 1913, taxes have increased in America, or the level of taxes have increased in America. That's number one. But also the value of the dollar has decreased, because as inflation rises, needless to say, your dollar buys less because its value has been decreased because of high taxation or the hidden tax of inflation. Now, I was talking to a former coworker several months ago. He no longer works with us, obviously. And we had this debate. I won't say debate, but rather a discussion on companies and businesses paying extra wages or giving a pay raise to their employees because of inflation. The argument was, these companies, they need to, pay more wages to their workers because of inflation. And I said, number one, that's not fair to the company, because basically you're faulting or penalizing. And this is what liberals like to do, because they hate capitalism too. Although they benefit from it, they hate it for you and I. Basically, you penalizing companies and businesses for something they have no control over. The companies and businesses have no control over inflation. That's a hidden tax, according to some researchers. That's a hidden tax. The companies have no control over that. So why would you penalize businesses and companies by saying you need to give us an extra pay raise so that we can compete, so that we can have money to be able to outpace this inflation? Because this inflation is eating up our wages. That's not their fault. And I explained it to him. I said, and his words were to me, he says, well, they have the money to give. Why shouldn't they give it? So I came back to him. I said, so basically what you're saying is simply because they have the money that they should pay it. Or I have the money, so I should pay it. Really? Are you kidding me? Basically what he was saying in an indirect way, though he didn't realize it, was I'm going to penalize you, company, for making a lot of money. And I'm going to penalize you and make you pay your workers extra money, even though their particular position in the company does not mandate or warrant that pay increase. Now, most jobs, for the most part, gives a pay increase. Most, not all, gives a yearly pay increase to their employees anyway. But when you get the government bureaucrats coming in here and these communist supporting, liberals coming in here trying to mandate businesses give extra money to their workers so that they can be able to curb this situation with inflation and high taxes, you penalizing them for what? Simply because they can afford to give this money? And I said, man, that argument doesn't stand in my book. Now, he meant well. This young man meant well, because he was getting his information from the liberal media and from the liberal school systems. And that's what he was getting his information from. So, of course, he's going to think that way. And I understood that. I was respectful to him, but I didn't support it at all, because I said, I knew in my heart that there was a bunch of nonsense. You penalize businesses and try to mandate that they give extra money to the workers when even though their positions don't call for that. If people get paid based on the skill level of their position, a supervisor, needless to say, is going to get more money than a regular worker. Why? Because they're a supervisor. They have more responsibilities. So the more responsibilities you have, the more pay you're going to get. If you want more pay, you got to work for it. It shouldn't be arbitrarily given to you because of inflation. Now, don't get me wrong. As a worker, if they pay me extra money, I'm not going to have this discussion with them that I'm having with you guys now. Oh, you guys shouldn't do that now. I'll be honest. I'm going to take the money. But I know deep in my heart that I know the real reason, as far as I'm concerned, I know the real reason for that. They're being pressured to do that by politicians, liberal politicians. They're being pressured for the most part to give extra money. And see, this is the problem, because though you get extra money, as the article states, they're getting these extra money, but they're still not getting over because of inflation, which, as I said before, some critics and economists, believe is a hidden tax. It's not always about a law of supply and demand. You mean to tell me it was a law of supply and demand for decades, ever since the Federal Reserve was put into law in 1913? Really? Oh, it's just that, people demand this product, and so more of it's coming, and people don't have, and they can't supply, so less of it, whatever. I mean, come on, man. In some instances, yes, but in not all instances. And I mentioned Thomas Sowell, and I love him. His books are brilliant, but I don't think he sees the bigger picture. I have to agree with Paul McGuire's assessment of this. I have to agree with the books on communism who wrote about it. I have to agree with their assessment, because I believe they have a bigger picture of what inflation is really all about. It is a hidden tax designed to discourage workers. Let me say this in the summation of this video. I believe, based on the studies that I have already read, that inflation is a hidden tax designed to discourage workers to the point where they no longer want to work, because they figure, well, what's the point? I might as well get on welfare because I'm making more money that way because I'm not getting taxed. You get a check, you're not getting taxed from that. So basically, technically, you're getting more money getting the welfare, for the government taking care of you and getting a check than you would working. You work, you get taxed out of the gazoo, and inflation eats it all up, which is the hidden tax. So basically, what I believe is designed to discourage workers, to cause them to say, I don't want to work anymore. Let me get on welfare. Let me depend on the government. So if you got, I'm just making a guess here, creating a theory. If you have, for example, I think there's 350 million people in America. And let's just theoretically say, out of the 350 million, 200 million decide to get on welfare because they're tired of the inflation and tired of the high taxes and so forth. So they get on, even though they're getting increased wages. So they get on, 200 million people gets on welfare. So that's only a little over, that's like 150 million people working. So now the government has to basically increase the taxes of the 150 workers and or to supply the needs of the 200 million people that's on welfare, and or go to the Federal Reserve, which is not a American system anyway, go to the Federal Reserve to borrow money from them. So the Federal Reserve loans them, prints money out of nothing and loans them this money with interest. That's how they make their money. And what happens is that you borrow this money, and then you try to put that money back into the system so that you can help supply the needs of the 200 million people that's on welfare. What ends up happening to the people that's working? They get so overburdened that they all quit. So now the country has to depend on the Federal Reserve now, because everybody didn't quit. They depended on the government. What's going to happen? All that money that they borrowed is going to run out. And America is going to end up just like some of these third world countries out there where people are starving. That's what's going to end up happening, because that's the goal of communism. in the West, rather. That's how they destroy capitalism in the West. They destroy capitalism in the West through progressive tax systems to discourage you from working. There's a way out of this. The way out, you know I'm a religious person, is through prayer. But the other way out of this, to change this, is voting for the right people. Voting for people who aren't communist supporting goons. That's what we need to do. So let's make that change in November. 2022 November, let's make that change. What do you guys think about this? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Like, share, and subscribe to this channel. God bless you all, and see you again on another Black Conservative.